When I say within the first 5 minutes, right, I've got boobs and balls here, suddenly they all sit up and they're like, oh, right, yeah, come and talk to us then. And then I sort of get the boobs out, get the balls out. And then at the end, I'm like, well, if you want to come up and feel the lumps in them, that's absolutely fine. So straight away, sort of hooking them in, engaging them.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Taking Control of Cancer, the podcast brought to you by the North East London Cancer Alliance. I'm Steve Bland, and in this podcast we try and give you a bit of a how-to guide to help you take control of your own cancer story. We know that not all cancers are treatable, not all cancers are curable, but there are things that we can all do to help ourselves and support our loved ones after a cancer diagnosis. This episode is all about teaching cancer awareness early. We're talking about CATTS, not that kind of cats, I'll explain later. And we're discussing and exploring a really innovative piece of work that's raising awareness among young people at a really early age. My guest for this one, we've got Jack Broadley, who's the Managing Director of CATTS. We'll explain what CATTS is in a minute, Jack. Hello, Jack.
Hi.
Natasha Francis, who's the School Engagement Officer at CATTS. Yeah. And we've got Nikki Poland, who's the Project Manager here at the North East London Cancer Alliance. Hi. Hello, Nikki. All right. I just called it CATTS then, Jack. What is CATTS?
CATTS is an abbreviation for Cancer Awareness for Teens and 20s. We're a small organisation that does our very best to raise awareness of all the signs and symptoms of the cancers that affect young people. Our sort of target audience is anywhere from sort of 14 right the way up to 26. But yeah, the messaging we try to share and empower young people with is designed to educate young people on cancer as a whole, and essentially when they get into sort of adolescent, they're able to take that information and continue checking themselves for the signs and symptoms.
What's your background then? How did you get involved with CATTS?
It's a bit of a long one. So I had testicular cancer when I was 21. I met the founder, James Adams, when I was going through treatment. He invited quite a few of us young people on sort of a branding expedition for CATTS. Equally, I set up a specific testicular cancer charity when I was 22. But essentially, I supported in the early days of CATTS, and then fast forward probably about 5 or 6 years to the pandemic, there was an opportunity to join CATTS as a trustee, which I leapt at. It was something that I was ready for, and I spent 2 or 3 years as a trustee alongside Johnny, who's our chair, and then the organisation took a different direction, and there was an opportunity for me to kind of run the day-to-day organisation.
Nikki, let's talk about your role. How does your role kind of fit into this world?
So I'm one of the project managers for the Cancer Alliance. I work specifically within the early diagnosis arm of the Cancer Alliance, and even more specifically within prevention, awareness and screening. So take part in some of the campaigns and the projects that we have, one of which is the cancer awareness in schools for North East London.
All right, let's talk about the sort of the scale of the challenge here then, Jack. What are the most common cancers that affect young people, and what are the challenges in terms of getting through to them?
So I think some of the cancers that affect young people are testicular, breast, skin. We've seen some instances of ovarian, stroke, cervical cancer creeping through in young people. But I'll let Natasha sort of answer some of the challenges that delivering the message in schools.
So when I'm in schools, I'm delivering on general sort of cancer signs and symptoms, breast cancer, testicular cancer, skin cancer, looking at normal and abnormal moles, and leading on to sun safety. But in regards to the different challenges, it's to do with trying to get into the schools. So it's making that contact within sort of public health, within all the different boroughs, and also making that contact with the schools. But trying to get into the schools has been the hardest part of the project. Once the schools are actually on board, they're absolutely fine, and I'm delivering, and they ask me back, but it's trying to get my foot in the door.
Why is that such a problem?
I think it's because schools are so busy, nobody wants to take the lead on organising it from their end.
Yeah, but I mean, you would think given what you guys are talking about, you would think it would be an absolute no-brainer in terms of educating these kids.
Yeah, and it's like I say, once I'm in there and they've actually seen the workshop themselves, they're like, right, this is amazing, we want you back again. But it is that trying to get your foot in the door that is the biggest issue.
What sort of reception do you get from the actual kids when you're talking to them?
Kids love it. Sometimes when I first go in and they're a bit like, oh, here we go, and we've got another guest visitor speaking to us. But actually, when I say within the first 5 minutes, right, I've got boobs and balls here, suddenly they all sit up and they're like, oh, right, yeah, come and talk to us then. And then I sort of get the boobs out, get the balls out. And then at the end, I'm like, well, if you want to come up and feel the lumps in them, that's absolutely fine. So straight away, sort of hooking them in, engaging them within those first 5 minutes is like key.
And then how do you kind of, what's the kind of follow-up? Do you then talk to the parents? Is there something that they take home with them? How do you kind of get them to be a bit more than just, that was funny, take action on the back of it?
They have a questionnaire which is basically for us really, to sort of look at the data. So a questionnaire they complete, totally anonymous. What do they know about cancer awareness? And generally it's quite low. I deliver the workshop, and then at the end of the session they complete the other side of the piece of paper, which is what have you learned? And the sort of the range between what they knew and what they've learned in that hour is huge. I think it's something like 95% of them have learned a lot about cancer awareness within that session. And then at the end of the session, there's always, come up if you want to have a chat. There's always a Q&A session, and they take away self-checking guides. I also give a lot of self-checking guides to the staff, because the staff are very much like, I know this is for like teens and 20s, but we've learnt so much. And they like to then take it away, and they take the self-checking guides into the staff room. So that message, I suppose we don't really know the figures, but that's spreading across staff as well. And then I leave it up to the staff to sort of have those conversations with parents.
That buy-in from the staff, Jack, I imagine that's massive in terms of the work in the schools.
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, when we first started this project 3 years ago, it was kind of a sort of a finger in the air, let's just try things. We found there was quite a lot of sort of kickback from teachers and sort of hesitance. And as we've progressed through the years, we've kind of adapted our approach to engaging with teachers. So we now do materials like train the teacher or teach the teacher. And essentially that's geared more towards them delivering the session, rather than having to rely on us being available and going in. They can deliver it themselves, like a bit of a hybrid approach.
The project actually started out in Redbridge in the first year. I wasn't part of the project at the time, wasn't part of the Alliance, but it did really well. We had the support of, this is something we also haven't mentioned, is that we've had really great support from the Healthy Schools teams within the Public Health Service, and they're doing kind of every possible angle that we can look at to get into schools, including looking at like the C cards, the condom scheme to get in for advertising. So we are literally thinking of all the possible ways we can get in, but that's digressing. Redbridge did really well. I think it was about 2,500 pupils were reached within year one, just in Redbridge alone. And then the following year, year two, which was last year, was expanded out to all of North East London schools. And we did have some hiccups to begin with, mainly trying to get that access to schools and also identifying who in our public health teams were the most appropriate person to contact. But off the back of that, we then kind of hit the floor running towards the back end of the year, and we reached, the target was again 2,500, but we went over to 3,000 pupils. And then that's kind of where the e-learning has phased in as well. And we also looked at the timing of when we started in school. So we were starting it with the September timetable, probably a bit naively thinking, oh yeah, that's when we need to start working. And it's not. The schools have got all their academic year planned out from before the summer holidays. So this year we looked at, okay, we're going to start before August. We're going to continue the momentum of year 2. Push with the Healthy Schools teams for year 3 at an early start, and because of that we had 2,500 pupils already booked by September to be taught.
Wow.
So that was our target, already smashed, and now I think we're looking at, we've got about, I think 3,900 and something.
Yeah, something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Projected to basically be about 4,000 by the end of the year will have received the message. So
fantastic results.
Yeah, really good. And based off the back of the evidence that we've looked at from the evaluation from last year. So yeah, there's an 80% shift in learning from the knowledge that they have before the survey to the knowledge that they have after. There's about a 95% and over satisfaction score from the workshops that Natasha delivers. And I think there's about 70% shift of pupils actually saying that they will go on to regularly check themselves afterwards. So it just shows the value of this offer that the schools need to take up on.
And that, actually, I imagine those stats are really good when it comes to what you were saying earlier, Natasha, about persuading a school to let you in. You're like, if you do let us in, this is what we do.
Yeah, that's it. And actually those stats, to go back to the parents and say, look, this is what is, in just an hour session, this is the impact it's having.
Yeah. I'm 44, Nikki, and I don't remember ever hearing any cancer education in school, even going up to high school. There was just nothing. This is brilliant stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think, like, we've actually, each of our boroughs is about 20% of our population in each borough are these young people. And I think for me as well, I don't remember having cancer awareness in school. I come from a nursing background, and actually I didn't really learn about the signs and symptoms of cancer until I was in that nursing background. Like, there were like things like just general weight loss, and obviously, yeah, lumps and things. But you think cancer is like quite scary. It's always bleeding, and it's not always bleeding. It can just be like pain or itching or discoloration or a dimple. And I think this is really important because these are our young generation. These are our future generations, and we do say that cancer is an old disease. We have that kind of culture of saying that and targeting older people when they've got the cancer. But why don't we use the opportunity to start preventing it when we know that there are certain things we can do, like skin cancer tends to come out later in life, but it's those early years of exposure to sun that it tends to develop in. So I think it's instrumental having this.
That's it. Like, when I was a kid, my only experience of cancer was hearing somebody's mum died from something. Yeah. That was it, really. Yeah. You know, people didn't really talk about it. But now, you know, in this podcast, we've done loads of episodes on, you know, various campaigns and projects the Alliance are working on, and one of them, which you're working on, is with these guys. So we've got a number of young people campaigns that we do and projects that we do. It tends to be for the 18 to 24-year-olds, but this is one of the only ones that we've got that actually looks at working with pupils in schools. And we're not just kind of in schools, we're also looking at how we can kind of reach with youth clubs. We're working with the youth clubs as well. We speak with the Healthy Schools leads as well. And I think, school age is when I know that there's a lot of consideration of protecting the innocence of children, and that cancer is a scary thing. Obviously, everybody associates cancer with dying, and that's not necessarily the case. We need to kind of shift our perspective and highlight that it's a potentially preventable disease with certain lifestyle and diet changes and factors like sun protection. I think it's really important. What role has social media played in your guys' work? What role does it play, and what role is it increasingly playing?
I think it's, from my perspective, hit and miss. So
Right.
You kind of need to be in the areas and the platforms where those young people are going to be. And it's an ever-changing landscape. We thought it was going to be on Snapchat, and then they moved to TikTok, and then they're moving on to something else.
Yeah.
And I think you've just got to make your content engaging, relevant and timely.
So how do you do that?
We'll work with some of our sort of designers. We have a university team that does our animations for us to, again, hook people in. Some people will have a bit of a laugh at it. Yeah. Once you get past that humour, it's got a message behind it. But yeah, it is quite challenging to engage with young people because they've got an attention span of like a few seconds.
Yeah, we talked about this with Toby from the Robin Cancer Trust. In terms of that moment, that kind of like the fleeting interest of a young person, actually maybe not even just a young person, maybe anybody, when you need to prick that interest in them, and then then the follow-up comes after that, and he's doing the marathon in his giant pair of balls, and he's taking it to festivals and that kind of thing, and it's that kind of use of humour, isn't it? That kind of tailoring the message to different people that it maybe pricks their interest, and then maybe they go on to do something else afterwards.
I think with CATTS though as well, the branding of actual CATTS within the workshop that feature in all of the videos as well helps them engage, because suddenly they're seeing these CATTS that are then checking themselves in the videos. So that branding is really important.
You mentioned about the increase in the amount of things that people said they learned, but what are you finding that people know from the kind of the moment you walk in? Is there any knowledge of cancer from the start of your sessions? There
is, and sometimes when they complete the questionnaire they think they know more than what they do,
right.
And it isn't till afterwards they go, oh, actually I thought it was this, and no, you've just corrected our perception of what we thought it was. And quite often it's very much like, I know a cancer sign, it's lumps. Everyone knows lumps, but not necessarily the weight gain or weight loss or unusual pain.
What are the big misconceptions then that you guys hear when you go into schools?
Testicular cancer, they're not always aware of that it's the most common cancer in young men between the ages of 15 and 45.
Right.
They're always like, oh no, that's much older men, that's much older. It's like, no, 15 to 45 is the most common cancer. And suddenly they sort of all sit up and take note.
And you have to get over some of the embarrassment when you're talking about certain body parts with teenage kids.
Yeah, it's always one of the first things. It's like, we do sort of set the scene slide in the sense of, right, we are going to be talking about body parts, so you need to make, there's no derogatory comments regarding anybody's body parts and who they are and what they do, and then they suddenly sit up, and then when I take the t-shirt off the set of boobs, they're like, whoa, and then we get over that, and then it's very much like, okay, there is a serious message behind this, and then we sort of go off on that pathway.
This is great, Nikki, because I think it'd be very easy for you guys as an alliance to all sit down in a room somewhere and figure out a plan. But actually, engaging with charities like this, engaging with other community groups, allows you to really get out into those communities that you want to get into, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We know that half of our population are from different ethnic minority backgrounds, and 25% of them speak languages other than English. So it's really important to kind of see and speak to these people, understand their experiences, understand what background they come from, like what their living situations are like, and how we can then actually tailor those messages to reach the people that we're supposed to be catering for.
By making all the campaigns all kind of fit together as well, how does this work kind of fit in with other work the Alliance is doing? We
have a number of young people campaigns, like I said, mainly aimed for 18 to 24-year-olds. So it does tie in, obviously, this is one of our earlier year groups for the younger people. But like I said, they all come from different backgrounds, and we are targeting people from our communities, and these young people fit into those communities. They've got parents from these communities that may not be able to read that screening letter that's sitting on the side, they can then pick up and be like, oh, that's the screening that Natasha's told me about that would happen to me later in life. I wonder if like my parent has actually gone to that, and they can have that conversation then with their parents or their carers. Or they might have a parent who's got some symptoms that they don't realise is related to cancer, that they can then broach that conversation with and say, oh, have you checked this with the GP? But not only that, like, it builds a relationship with our GP practices by helping teach our young people how to have that language with the GP practices when they go to see them as well. So it ties in throughout all our campaigns, arguably.
The fear factor, I imagine, if you're like I said, if you're a teenager, maybe even younger than that, in your own experiences, you might not have been told when somebody was ill. Somebody might have died, a relative, even an older relative. Your only experience might be, seeing a death or hearing about a death, mightn't it? How do you overcome that fear factor in the teenagers and the kids that you're working with?
Again, I think it's about the messaging and how it's delivered. I think we've come a long way since sort of the 80s and 90s, and actually...
Careful. No.
Yeah.
Not that far.
No, but I think cancer used to cause a lot more death, and through the work of many charities and hospitals and NHS and researchers, it's come on leaps and bounds, and survival rates are increasing, and I think we've got to lean into that. Like testicular cancer back in the 70s, 30% survival rate. My dad had it when he was 24. This was like back in probably late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Survival rate was like 30% back then. I had it when I was 21. Survival rate is 98%, and that's just because of treatment that's available.
How did you find yours? Did you know what to look for back then?
No, I had no clue. I just felt something on my testicle that didn't feel quite right. Took myself to the doctors. Originally, they just sent me for an ultrasound scan. Said it's a simple cyst, nothing to worry about. And then I was reassured by that. And I think it was about 8 months later, something was still there, and it was getting bigger. So I decided to go back to my doctor and say, I actually had a cough, and she said, is there anything else you want me to check whilst you're here? I said, yeah, actually, can you have a look at this? I've got a cyst on my testicle, and it seems to be getting bigger. Anyway, fast forward, and 2.5 weeks later I got a cancer diagnosis, and it wasn't that it was cancer 8 months prior, it was a cyst, but I'd just not been checking myself.
Yeah. Again,
selfishly, not checking myself in that period, and spotted that the cyst had gone and then a tumour had grown. And I think it's, for me, just being regularly sort of checking yourself and having the confidence to know what you're feeling for and what's right, what's not right.
You mentioned the word confidence there. How did you feel about going to the doctor in the first instance?
It can be embarrassing.
Yeah.
I think you do need to put that to one side, and GPs are there to help. We try and do work with GPs to sort of educate them as well, because there will be some, I'm not saying all GPs, but there will be some GPs that will just say, you're young. If you come into them saying that you're tired, they will just say, it's just you're tired from probably doing sports and things like that. But we always encourage young people to get a second opinion, and if they feel, your body better than anyone else, and I think if you feel like something's not right, but a doctor's saying that it is okay, and you want to get a second opinion, that's okay as well.
Do you notice, I guess this is the one for all of you maybe, do you notice a difference between young boys and young girls in the way that the education's received, the way that they respond to it, maybe the confidence for going to the doctor, the confidence to talk about it honestly, the maturity maybe in the way that it's dealt with?
Yeah, just from doing the sessions, the girls are a lot more receptive.
Right.
And when it comes to asking that question afterwards, you've said you wouldn't self-check, you don't self-check, but would you now self-check? The ones that say no tend to be the young boys. I'd say 99% of girls say they will always self-check. A high percentage of boys do, but then when I go back and look, it's always those that are the male ones that have said that they wouldn't self-check. And just going back to what Jack was saying about the going to the doctors, that's part of the session of how we're going to communicate with our doctor, and making them aware that they can go by themselves, they can go with a friend, and when they get into the doctor, to actually keep some kind of a symptom diary. So like, what are your symptoms, how long you've had them for, and how's it affecting your quality of life? And that's the main one. Why and how is it affecting your quality of life? And you've got to be persistent. If you feel like you're not being taken seriously, be as persistent as your symptoms are being, and keep going back. And therefore, that then leads on to having that conversation with their parents and sort of educating upwards. Like Nikki was saying, a lot of the communities we go into, English is their second language. So they've got to be able to educate parents so they can have them conversations with GPs as well.
Nikki, do you find going into different communities that there are differences in the way that young people in certain communities think about cancer? Because I'm thinking, we've talked a lot about certain. We did an episode, a Bengali community, where I'm wondering if the young people in these communities kind of have maybe misconceptions or taboos exist in certain communities among the young people that you work with? Yeah,
I mean, like I said, we've got a very diverse background of people in North East London, and a lot of the cultures, like you were saying, with the difference between kind of female and male young people, a lot of the cultures, there'll be an emphasis of a bigger responsibility on the caretaker side of things for the female. So they are a bit more responsible, and they are a bit more, I would say, maybe au fait with health. So, for example, we've got a Gypsy Roma Traveller project coming up, and we know that in that young age group, women tend to be caretakers. They might even leave school to look after their families. They are the ones that kind of look after the men and the males. And the males they've got that very kind of masculine stereotype. They don't speak about health. They don't speak about, especially cancer, because that is just even saying the C word it's too much. So, yeah, I think. Going back to your question, what was your question, sorry?
Just different communities and the differences that you see in all the different, diverse communities you've got in this part of London, whether you see differences in the way that the young people think about cancer and respond to you guys.
So, I think so. I think the young people are actually more open to talking about cancers. It is almost like a generational taboo, talking about cancers. I think this is all the more reason for why it's important to reach young people, because even with language and literacy, like Natasha's saying, like they can support their older family members or carers to be able to get the help that they need, or to talk about the topics that they were potentially scared about. Again, going back to the Gypsy Roma Traveller project that I was talking about, even saying the C word, it's like you're manifesting the illness by just talking about it. So it's breaking down all of those kind of stigmas and opening up the conversation from an early age into our older generations.
Natasha, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but what role do the parents have here? Because I'm a father of a 9-year-old. I imagine, say he got some education at school, maybe when he's a bit older, there's a big onus on me. I think as a parent to keep telling him and keep reminding him to check yourself. He isn't going to, he doesn't even remember to get his breakfast in the morning if I don't tell him to. How do you kind of educate the parents as part of this as well?
I think really the children need to be open, have that conversation when they go home, and have those conversations with their parents. Take the self-checking guides home that they're given, and have that dialogue between child and parent, and then the parent really needs to take on board what they've been taught in schools, and keep coming back to that every so often. And have you self-checked? What is your normal? Know your normal, which is what I always refer to in the sessions. We have like keywords and phrases and the know your normal, and explaining what know your normal is, and hopefully the parents will continue to sort of recap and just dip into it every so often, and hopefully the schools are doing the same.
And the peer-to-peer support as well. The kids, you're looking out for each other, I imagine, is a big factor for them.
Yeah.
I can remember, Jack, when I was younger. I can remember my dad. We were in the car driving somewhere. I can't think how old I was, but I remember him saying, "If you ever find any lumps down there, just let me know." He didn't say why to let him know, but he just said, "Let me know." We have come a long way, haven't we, in terms of having conversations with kids? I don't think probably we would have had these conversations even 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's circumstantial. So I was just thinking about it then as Natasha was talking, and like I'd never had that conversation with my dad about testicular cancer, even though he'd been through it, and that might have been a factor. You know, he wanted to kind of protect me from that, and by sort of not talking about it, and you know, again, it was that generation of we just get on with it. You know, we don't talk about our health and issues that we're having. We just get on with it. But I think nowadays we are having better and more open dialogued conversations about our health. Like, I'll speak to my little girl about health and just make it normal. You know, it's part of everyday life. Like, you turn the radio on and there's constant sort of stories about mental health, cancer, all sort of walks of life. And I think as long as you're open and honest with your children, they'll feel comfortable coming to you when they feel something's not right. Yeah.
One for all of you. I mentioned my 9-year-old. You know, what age should we start having conversations with kids about things like cancer?
Well, this project is aimed from Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5, so sort of 14, 15-year-olds upwards.
Should it be even earlier? Should I be talking to my 9-year-old, do we think, about...
It's got to be done in a different way.
Yeah.
Because of their maturity and what they do and don't understand. I think at Key Stage 4, the wording and how I deliver it, it's suited to. But I think lower down the school, it's got to be done in a totally different way. Maybe at year 8, when they have the HPV vaccination, there could be a separate type of project where schools are delivering on this. But yeah, I think we can have them conversations, but it needs to be done in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think what I've noticed, and again, it's just my circumstances, I think schools are probably getting ahead of it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like my little girl's 10. She was 9 when she was sort of receiving information about sex and consent, and sort of what I would consider information I was receiving at like 15, 16. You know, my little girl's receiving it a lot sooner now. So I think they're trying to get ahead of sort of consent and making sure that young people are aware of that side of it. But I don't necessarily feel like they're educating on cancer. But yeah, I think Natasha's right. It's got to be... Kids that age will go around and go, oh, you know, I've got this, I've got that, I've got this. The brain doesn't sort of maturely give them that sort of off switch. Yeah. But there are kids that age getting cancer, so it's very difficult.
It's tricky. My 9-year-old, all he really knows of cancer is that his mum died from it. Yeah. And if you mention cancer to him, he just thinks, if I say someone's got cancer, his first question almost is, are they going to die? Or like, when are they going to die?
Yeah, I think, again, this plays into the bigger picture. You only tend to hear of like people dying from cancer rather than surviving cancer. I think people tend to focus more on the negative rather than the positive, and there is some work to be done. Like we do, we put on the website stories of people that have been through cancer and, you know, they've survived cancer. It can be a good opportunity, like during some of our workshops, to display that. But I don't think it has much of a play in terms of people's sort of thought process when it comes to cancer. Because I think naturally we associate cancer with death, and it kills people. It's not necessarily associated with you can beat this and it's survivable. I think we've still got a lot of work to do to get past that that barrier.
Yeah, but this comes back to all the work that you guys do, Nikki, in tailoring your messaging to the people you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I was thinking about that with the younger people. One of my friends, she's a teacher as well, and when I was a nurse, I did actually go in and do some teaching, just more about kind of the nursing profession, but. I think we actually took in almost like it's like a fake sun cream, but it has a UV light, so you can get kids to apply the sun cream and then see where they've missed. Yeah. And I think that kind of thing, making it more aimed at younger people and interactive, but still having that kind of emphasis of actually, yeah, this is when you can start learning how to be empowered to look after your body and look after yourself and understand things a bit more. I think children know more than we think they know. Yeah. Like, they're a lot more clued up than we think they are. So,
yeah. Like when we were kids, I don't know if you remember, but there used to be sun cream.
For me, Jack.
Yeah, it was a long time ago for me. There used to be a lot of advertisements on telly, like springtime for sun cream and all the different brands. Like, you don't see any of that now. It's the marketing and campaigns are more geared towards on like social media and stuff, and then kids are just going to flick through that because they just don't find it interesting.
But I can remember when I was younger. This is going back a bit, but I remember Baywatch had a skin cancer storyline. One of the lifeguards had skin cancer, and it was a huge story because cancer just wasn't portrayed on telly or in the media at all back then. And I can remember it being a really big thing, quite shocking almost. And I think we have come a long way, haven't we, in terms of how just general awareness, not just among young people, among everybody, I guess. But where are we going to be in another 10 years? Nikki, what are the kind of changes that we still need to see, to get to these really ambitious early diagnosis targets across the NHS? Where are we still missing out? Where are we still not quite getting it right?
Well, I think for starters, looking at this project, getting into schools is obviously the first thing. I think there needs to be, obviously it is in the DFE guidance for PSHE that cancer should be taught, but I was having a flick through that yesterday, and I think you actually type in the word cancer on that guidance and it comes up 4 times randomly, kind of hidden throughout the pages. Right. It's not that clear, it's not that heavily emphasised. I think there needs to be more focus on looking at functional health rather than reactive health. And I think as the NHS, we've got a lot of catching up to do on being more preventative in the way that we look at people's health. For example, we've got emerging evidence coming out in terms of how ultra-processed foods might play a part. And that really interests me because I think actually we've got a lot of people, especially in North East London, on lower incomes and not necessarily aware of how they might actually be contributing to poor health because they're not given the tools to be able to understand how to live healthy lives. So we have got a lot of work to do, but I'm optimistic.
Where are you guys kind of seeing as your growth areas?
I think from our perspective, it's catering how we engage with young people. So there's not sort of one size fits all. So we in the second year of the project, we decided to develop an e-learning version of our workshop. So we took what Natasha delivers and tried to make it as like for like in an online and interactive setting so that we could reach more people. There's only one of Natasha, and as much as we'd want her to be in every single school, it's just not possible. Yeah. So we was like, right, well, how do we tackle this? And we're just starting to get to that point now where the e-learning's come into play, and we've seen and got a lot of feedback just on how useful that's going to be. But it's kind of like we've seen other e-learning tools out there, but it's not been catered specifically for this. So yeah, we're quite optimistic and hopeful that it'll do some of the work that we need it to do and engage young people in that way that we want to engage with them.
You said something interesting before, Natasha, about educating in what your normal is and looking for changes. Even if you don't necessarily know the symptoms of a certain type of cancer, understanding your own body, isn't it? And that's sort of almost a different bit of education for kids, isn't it, to actually just understand what is normal to them.
Yeah, and just getting them to self-check
Yeah.
so that they know they're normal, and then they know what's right for them, and if anything goes wrong, they know to go to the doctors and get it checked out.
What's our message to people to finish up? What's our message to people listening, whether it be a parent, maybe a young person listening, a teacher maybe who wants to get involved? What's our kind of parting message for people?
Come and find us. We're eager to teach. So yeah, I think
Look us up, CATTS.
Yeah.
And contact details are on there, and we will be in your school, or you can sign up for the e-learning. Everything helps.
And also, you don't have to do anything.
No, it's you literally, from their point of view within a school, all they need to do is be able to take the children off timetable for an hour, and I do everything else.
So even if a parent is listening and their child isn't at a school that you guys work with, they can still find all your resources.
Absolutely, yeah.
All the guidance on how to check themselves. Everything is all on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got sort of a free to access version of the e-learning, which is essentially just taking young people through the signs and symptoms. The sort of project-based e-learning side is more around the data and showing that we've had an impact in terms of educating young people. But yeah, I think from CATTS' perspective, engage with the free resource that's available, i.e. Natasha going into schools and the e-learning. And I think for young people, just be open, and it's not, cancer isn't a scary thing. If we catch it early, and I think NHS are doing wonderful things to sort of, that cancer diagnosis pathway, you've got to get a turnaround of like 4 weeks. We are going in the right direction.
And talk to each other, I guess, as well for kids.
Yeah.
I feel like, for my 9-year-old, I think if they were all talking about it, I mean, they might do. I don't know what they talk about. I ask him what happened at school, and I get literally nothing back. But I imagine if they were all talking about it, that to me sounds like something that would really help.
Yeah, and like my little girl came home from school the other day, and she said one of her friends had lost her grandma to cancer. So there are things that are happening, and they will be having conversations, because her grandfather passed away from cancer as well, and it's sort of finding commonalities. And yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. It was really insightful.